Let's take a look at solving this equation. This is a rational equation, and you're going to need some paper and a little bit of time. There's a lot of things that go into this that we've already learned. So we know it's an equation because it has an equal sign, and it tells us to solve. And we call this a rational equation because it has rational expressions in it. Okay? Rational expressions are big fractions. And the first thing we want to do is get rid of the fractions. So we can get rid of all the fractions in an equation by using the power of the LCD, least common denominator. Now, the least common denominator in this case is pretty easy to find. It's going to have an x plus 3 in it, and it's going to have an x minus 3 in it. So LCD is x plus 3 times x minus 3. And in this case, instead of using the LCD to get all of the fractions combined together, we're going to use it to get rid of the denominators. And what you need to do is you need to multiply every term by the LCD, including the 8. Even though the 8's not a fraction, it is a term. And basically, we're multiplying the left side times the LCD and then multiplying the right side times the LCD. And you can do that. If you multiply something times the left side, you have to do the same thing times the right. So we're going to multiply times x plus 3, x minus 3. We'll multiply this one times x plus 3, x minus 3, and we'll multiply this one times x plus 3, x minus 3. Okay, and now watch what happens. When we multiply, see this x plus 3 right here? It will cancel out our denominator. They'll both reduce down to 1. And see this x minus 3? It will cancel out this denominator. They'll both reduce down to 1. And now look at your denominators. You don't have any anymore, right? This will be gone and this will be gone. Okay, on to the next step. In the first term, we have 8x times x minus 3 minus 8 times x plus 3, x minus 3 equals x minus 14, all right, that's a binomial, let's put it in parentheses, times x plus 3. Okay, so we used our LCD, and now we have an equation with no more fractions. Now, I see a lot of multiplying, a lot of distributing here, so let's go ahead and do that. 8x times x is 8x squared. 8x times negative 3 is minus 24x. Now this term, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put these two together first before I distribute the 8. So let's drop down the minus. Here's the 8. And you probably know by now that x minus 3 times x plus 3, that's conjugates. And when you multiply two conjugates, you get the difference of two squares. Okay, if you're not sure about that, you can go look up difference of two squares or just foiling, multiplying binomials. All right, so basically what I did was I FOILed this to get this. And now on the right-hand side, we do need to FOIL. I don't know what this is, so I'll go ahead and do it. First two, x squared, outer 2, plus 3x, inner 2, minus 14x, and then the last two, negative 14 times 3, that's negative 42. Okay, one more step to distribute, and then I'll combine all my like terms. I need to distribute this. So 8x squared minus 24x. So let's see, this is going to be minus 8x squared. And then we have a negative 8 times a negative 9. A negative times a negative is a positive. Let me make that bold. 72 equals x squared plus 3x minus 14x minus 42. Okay, so I have finished all my multiplying. all my distributing, distribute, combine like terms. I do have some like terms. Let's look on the left-hand side. 8x squared and a minus 8x squared, guess what? Those cancel out. 8x squared minus 8x squared is 0. So I'm left with negative 24x plus 72 equals, and on the right-hand side, I can combine plus 3x with a minus 14x. So x squared minus 11x minus 42. Okay, now I have an equation, and I couldn't really see before I multiplied and combined all my like terms, but now I can see that I have an equation, and is it quadratic or is it linear? This 2 tells me that it's quadratic. I have a quadratic equation that I need to solve. Okay, so if you're not good with solving quadratic equations, go back and look at some videos on solving quadratic equations. The first step in solving a quadratic equation is you have to get it equal to 0. So on the left-hand side, I want no x's. If I add 24x, these two will cancel out. And if I add 24x to the left, I have to add 24x to the right. I don't want any more 72. So to get rid of a 72, I'm going to say minus 72. And that will cancel out, 72 minus 72. So I will have a 0 on the left-hand side now. And if I subtract 72 from the left, I need to subtract 72 from the right. All right, left-hand side. These canceled, they both turned into zeros. So 0 equals x squared. Let's see, negative 11x plus 24x, that's going to give me 13x. Negative 42 minus 72 is going to give me negative 114. All right, my first step is done, solving a quadratic equation. It equals 0, smiley face. All right, now we need to factor and then set all of our factors equal to 0. So 0 equals, let's factor the right-hand side. It is a trinomial, 1, 2, 3. It starts with the number 1. The leading coefficient is a 1. So I call this easy 1 factoring. You can look up leading coefficient of 1, x and x. Now I need two numbers to multiply to give me 14 and to subtract to give me 13. Okay, I will come over to the side and I will find that. So I need my calculator, 114. Okay, now I know 1 goes into 114 times. Okay, now let's do 114 divided by 2. And I'll get 2 and 57. 114 divided by 3. I will get 3 and 38. 114 divided by 4. Nope, 4 doesn't work. I get a decimal. 114 divided by 5. Nope, 5 doesn't work. 114 divided by 6. There we go. 6 and 19. And you know what? I think we found it. 6 times 19 gives me 114. And 6 minus 19 gives me 13. Okay, so it is 6 and 19. That's my numbers here, 6 and 19. Since it's a minus, I have different signs. Plus 13 means that my larger one has to be plus, smaller one has to be minus. Okay, here's my two factors. I set both of my factors equal to 0, because if this one is 0, the whole thing is 0. And if this one is 0, 0 times anything is 0, so the whole thing's 0. So I'm going to have 0 equals x minus 6, and I'm going to have 0 equals x plus 19. When I solve the one on the left, I add 6 to both sides. I will find out that 6 equals x. When I solve the one on the right, I will subtract 19 from both sides. I will find out that negative 19 equals x. So here are my two possible answers. Now, it's super important that you make sure that these don't give you a 0 in the original problem. What would give you a 0 in this denominator right here that I'm circling in green? Well, that would be a -3. -3 plus 3 gives you 0. Is that one of my possible answers down here? -3? Nope. Okay, good. What would give me a 0 for x in this denominator? A +3. So I look, I make sure I don't have a +3 in my answers, and I don't. Both of these answers are good. So when I go into the computer, I will type it in as x equals 6, -19. Two answers separated by a comma.